week of late-night baseball here with the Birds playing out in Oakland and then San Francisco over the weekend. And, of course, the Ravens getting out on the practice field early in the morning and getting ready for one of these weird midweek preseason football games where we're not sure who the hell is going to play or who's going to be on the field in the second half of the game, but Luke Jones and I will be on the scene at M&T Bank Stadium on Thursday night. The Purple Crab Cake as the defending NFC champions and Cam Newton, who will not be playing beach volleyball this week, but instead real football for at least a series or two down at the ballpark. And Luke, we all had a little lump in the throat on Saturday night and a little bit of a scare on the Ronnie Stanley thing. And such is preseason in a week where we've already lost one of the draft picks, right?
No doubt about it. And just a few days after Bronson Kafusi lost for the year with a broken ankle, which not something that's a crushing blow to the Ravens in 2016, but certainly not something you wanted to see. They get a scare on Saturday night at the stadium with Ronnie Stanley leaving practice about midway through. Kind of walked off the field. Wasn't real easy to decipher what had happened to him. It happened during a one-on-one drill. It's what John Harbaugh has described as a soft tissue issue, with whatever that is. But that could be all kinds of different things.
Why doesn't he just give the press conferences in like Japanese or Esperanto or some language?
At least we would be able
we're trying to decipher.
Translate that,
Right.
At least we can translate it.
Dude, I totally get his paranoia about it. I really do, because he's been on the other side of trying to decipher the paranoia when someone else is hurt, right? I mean,
yeah.
I get it, but I don't get it, kind of, sort of.
I get it in the sense that other coaches do it. I won't excuse all of it across the board. I mean, these aren't issues of national security. I mean, if he's dealing with a hamstring, a hip, a knee, whatever it is, just you don't even have to tell us that a timetable and how long he's going to be out. Just let us know.
Let us know if it's a pinky winky toe or whatever
exactly.
It is, right? Exactly, right.
Exactly. So despite the mystery there, the sentiment that I've gathered, and certainly that people expressed after Saturday's practice, was that this isn't anything that they're overly concerned about. Does it put him in jeopardy to miss the Thursday preseason opener? Sure. Does it probably make the Ravens' decision much easier to potentially not play Joe Flacco? Yeah, but at the same time, this isn't a case where they're fearing that Ronnie Stanley's going to be out for the season, based on what they were saying late Saturday night. So it's scary. It's something that you don't want to see, and certainly they had another rookie in there, Alex Lewis, playing left tackle, which I thought was interesting, instead of the incumbent backup, James Hurst, which I think that alone probably will make some fans happy to see. But overall, something that you never want to see, but looks like they've avoided anything really serious. But getting back to what you said from the beginning of the conversation, so many players banged up right now. I mean, still haven't seen Suggs or Doomerville or Steve Smith or Brashad Perriman. Clearly not going to see any of those individuals in the first preseason game. But go down the list. I mean, you have Pitta, you have Crockett Gilmore, Lorenzo Taliaferro is still not practicing. Chris Moore, the rookie receiver, who looked really good the first couple of days, he's been out with a foot issue. Timmy Jernigan has missed some time. So, it's really going to be a very limited, accurate look at what this roster, what this team's going to look like come week one against Buffalo. But that being said, it will be nice to see them on the field Thursday night and give us a little bit of context. I mean, we've talked so much, and I wrote about this over the weekend at WNST.net, so much discussion about the running back position. I mean, Justin Forsett being the veteran leading the way right now, but you have Terrence West, who arguably has looked as impressive as anyone in camp through the first week and a half. Understanding it is just training camp, but you have Buck Allen, Kenneth Dixon, who had the early knee injury, but he had his best practice of the summer on Saturday and turned some heads. I'm really looking forward to the running back position, because all those other positions we've talked about that have question marks, wide receiver, outside linebacker, even tight end, they all have multiple players missing right now. So I don't know exactly what we'll learn on Thursday night from those spots, but I do think I am very much intrigued to see guys like Terrence West and Buck Allen play on Thursday night behind the starting offensive line, and seeing if they can put a little more pressure on Justin Forsett. And it's not a knock on Forsett. He's had a fine camp, but when you see some of these younger guys stepping up the way they have in practices, and just the urgency that they're playing with, gets you a little more excited, because we've talked about this. This team needs playmakers on both sides of the ball, and if you're going to find playmakers, it's most likely going to be young guys doing it. and be nice if one of those young running backs could really step forward and really push Justin Forsett for playing time right away.
Luke, the Flacco situation for Thursday, I mean, look, we've all seen him on the field for 10 days, even if you're just watching the highlights or catching Cliff Brown or Brent on CSN, or, you've seen the number 5 throwing the ball around. There's only been a handful of us, really, or a couple handfuls that have been out there and seen the practices, so to speak, but we're all pretty convinced he's okay. Play God here, play John Harbaugh. Do you play Flacco Thursday or not? I don't know. I mean, yes, if he feels like he wants to go out there or he has something he has to do, but they do want to hand the ball off. They do want to run the ball, and if there's a time to figure out who your running back is, I would say that's now, right?
I don't play him on Thursday, and especially with Ronnie Stanley's status now being in question, I definitely don't play him on Thursday. And Joe is even, Joe's really dismissed the need to play extensively in the preseason. Now, he needs to play in the preseason. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you just sit him for 4 games and you roll the ball out on September 11th and he's ready to go against the Bills. I don't think it works that way either. But I don't think you risk anything in this first preseason game. I mean, let's face it. Over the last few years, how much has Flacco played in the first preseason game anyway most years? A series or two? I mean, what are you really gaining there? And especially, let's face it, we're talking about a Carolina defense that was really, really good last year. A front that's very talented. I wouldn't risk it. I don't think John Harbaugh is going to risk it. I don't know that for sure. I'm not sure we're going to find out an answer for sure over the next couple days before we get into the first preseason game, and ultimately we'll find out Thursday around 7:30 or so. But I wouldn't play him in the first game. I think the second preseason game, I'd get him in there for the cameo, kind of what we would see from the normal preseason opener with Flacco, and then I'd give him the work that he really needs to get in the third preseason game. That's how I would handle it. That's what my gut tells me the Ravens how they'll handle it, but I don't know that for certain. But if there's any question about Ronnie Stanley, certainly if Ronnie Stanley's not going to play on Thursday, I don't think there's any benefit whatsoever to having Flacco play. And even if Stanley does play, I still think it'd be better off just putting Ryan Mallett behind there. And as you said, focus on your running game a little bit more. There's just too much to lose and not enough to gain to risk it in that first preseason game in my mind.
Is there any way to quantify what you've seen from Ronnie Stanley? And, I know they've gone full speed at various points. He's obviously a very large guy based on the draft and technique and all that. Notre Dame, he's a gifted guy. What has your vibe been on him? And let's not compare him to Ogden, right? I mean, let's not do that. But, Laramie Tunsil's going to play guard this year. They're not going to be comparing, right? Either one. We had Adam Beasley on last week. That's the position he's going to play. Stanley kind of has to stand on his own, but the more we notice him, the worse it is. Probably like Ogden, the less you notice him, the better at this point. And I would think if you're out there in practice, I don't know that you notice him. I'm sure you notice him when Flacco's getting harassed, though, right?
Yeah, I think, first of all, as you know, it's difficult to quantify offensive line play because it is so subjective. You don't have stats per se other than, I know people try to keep track of pancake blocks and obviously sacks allowed, but I think they've felt good about it. I don't know if they have expectations that he's going to be a Pro Bowler his first year in the NFL, and as you said, to try to compare him to Jonathan Ogden would be completely unfair. But I do think they feel he can be dependable. I think a lot of veterans have talked about how mature he is, but mature with humility. He's not someone who comes in and has the attitude of knowing he's a first-round pick and knowing that he's the heir apparent, and now knowing he's not even an heir apparent to Eugene Monroe. He is the guy because Eugene Monroe's not here anymore. But I know Marshall Yonda said it very early in camp that he goes into the meeting room and he shuts up. And he meant that in a positive way, in that he knows he has a lot to learn, and he's just been a sponge. He's listened to the likes of
He's a really humble kid, right? If you talk to him at all, he's a mellow guy, and he's the antithesis of a jerk. Literally. He's a very, very polite, quiet, sort of studious kind of human being, right? You could see that pretty quickly.
Yeah, and he's someone who really likes the game. He's a student of the game. I think it helped a lot, and this was one of the. Remember when we were debating the merits of Laramie Tunsil before the marijuana mask video came out, minutes before the draft began on that Thursday night. Before that,
by the way, I saw one of those in the window in Highlandtown. Yeah, I did. Yeah, and Jen's like, dude, we play the Dolphins. You should put that on and just wear it on the internet as an ode to welcoming Laramie Tunsil to town.
That'd be funny. That would definitely be funny.
But I did see one in a window in Highlandtown on Eastern Avenue. I'm not making that up.
Well, it's out there. I mean, people use it.
Everyone needs one, right?
But I think one of the now as I try to be serious here,
since when have we been serious around
I know,
here,
right?
Right. Exactly.
One of the real discussion points with Tunsil versus Stanley was the systems that they were in. Keep in mind, Ole Miss had a little more spread formation, not as much in a 3-point stance, spread offense. Whereas Notre Dame, it was far more of a pro-ready system. One of the things that really drew the Ravens to Stanley was that John Harbaugh had a long-term relationship, long-term friendship with Stanley's offensive line coach at Notre Dame. So they knew they did their homework on him, and they felt he's someone who had a smaller learning curve. Now, did they truly feel he was better than Laramie Tunsil? People are going to believe what they want to believe. I know.
I'm not buying that, but okay. I mean,
sure, but I do think that it was so close that they felt that was a worthy tiebreaker to say, okay, Tunsil's a knucklehead. We'll go with Ronnie Stanley, who we feel is a cleaner player from that regard. Now, time will tell whether they're right about this. I mean, if Tunsil goes on to be an 11-time Pro Bowler and is the next Jonathan Ogden, and Laramie Tunsil ends up being more like, let's say, Michael Orr, then, the Ravens made the wrong decision. But we have no way of knowing that. Based on what I've seen in training camp to this point, I think they're getting a solid football player, a guy who I think can hold up well as a rookie and certainly has a lot more upside. We'll need to get stronger as his career goes on. That's not atypical for any offensive lineman or really just about any player at any position in the NFL, but I don't get a sense. Some people talked about, when they had originally agreed to terms with Jake Long that, Jake Long's going to be their left tackle and they'll move Stanley to left guard. I never thought that that's really what was on their mind. I thought that was a case of they thought Jake Long could be a veteran backup for them, something they could still use, quite frankly, but a guy that could give them a little more depth, help them out a little bit, give them a little more versatility, perhaps. But I've said this all along, and I've used the example. John Ogden played guard his rookie year, but keep in mind, Tony Jones is a Pro Bowl kind of quality left tackle at the time. So it's not as though the Ravens did that because Ogden couldn't play left tackle. It's just that they just had a situation where they could put him at guard. This is a case where I think the Ravens feel good about Ronnie Stanley. Again, he's going to have some bumps on along the way. That's inevitable. But
took one on Saturday night. We'll see what the long tail of him missing time is going to be. Right.
But I don't see a guy who has struggled mightily, or that they're panicking, or that they feel they're going to have to pull off a trade or anything like that. Training camp performance is fleeting, good or bad. There's guys that I've seen that look so good, and then they get to the preseason and get to the regular season, and you just say, what happened to the guy who looked so good on the backfields? And then on the flip side, I've seen guys struggle, and then they get to the preseason, and the bright lights turn on, and suddenly it clicks for them. I don't know what Ronnie Stanley's going to be in that regard. I can't be a fortune teller in that way. But
Rex is scheming something up to confuse the hell out of him right now.
You know
right?
that. There's no doubt about that. And that's something the Ravens are aware of, and I'm sure will be prepared for. And probably wouldn't be a bad idea to give him a little max protect and some extra help early on in his first season. But overall, what I've seen, what the Ravens have seen, I think they feel positive about their choice, and we'll see how it plays out. Maybe Thursday will be at the first test, but if not, don't expect him to be out very long.
Anything else you're watching between now and Thursday night in regard to playing time or who's in or who's out? Because I know you do spend, as well as all the other beat writers, an inordinate amount of time trying to count heads out there on the field. I guess the only heads that really count at this point is who plays Thursday night and how well they play in whatever role they're going to play on Thursday night. And there's going to be a lot of guys out there. We have no idea who they are by the time the second half starts.
Yeah, I mean, it's I mentioned the running backs. I'm really looking forward to seeing the young running backs play. I mean, when you get to this point in training camp, you've had guys going up against each other so long, you kind of lose context. It's like, okay, this guy looks really good against the opposition, but he's very familiar with the opposition at this point. You know what kind of idiosyncrasies your opponents have. You're very familiar with your team's offensive system if you're a defensive player and vice versa. So you want to see someone else. You want to see them go up against an unfamiliar opponent and see how guys compete. I'm looking forward to running back. I think I'm looking forward to seeing Kamale Correa and Zach Orr in that battle at inside linebacker. To this point, Correa has had more of the reps in the base defense, but on Saturday, Zach Orr was taking the starting reps. So that competition is far from over. I'm really looking forward to seeing Tavon Young, not necessarily as a guy who's going to start or even play defense right away, but as a rookie cornerback, I'm trying to think, it's been a while since I've been this impressed with a rookie cornerback. He competes, and he's someone who has some ball skills, and I would not be surprised to see him in the mix at the nickelback position at some point here in his rookie season. So I'm looking forward to seeing him. But beyond that, it's just kind of getting context with some of these young guys. You want to see how Eric Weddle handles the backside of the defense. All positive reviews, and I'm not saying that there's doubts there, but how much of an impact can Eric Weddle
Boy,
make?
He's become indispensable, and we haven't even seen him on the field yet,
well,
right?
And that's my thing. You want to see him on the field. As much as everyone has just raved about him, from Dean Pease comparing his leadership factor to what Junior Seau did for the Patriots last decade, when the Patriots were at their height, some of their, and when they had a much better defense at that point in time too. Other guys have talked about Weddle being the Joe Flacco of the defense from a leadership standpoint. I want to see some context there. Not that I expect him to be out there very long on Thursday, but you get your first look. The first quarter will be interesting, and then we'll be bored, and then more so you're looking for those individuals to shine. I'm looking to see what Keenan Reynolds can do. Really rough start to training camp for him. I'm not going to mince words. I think he'd be the first to admit it, that he hasn't played particularly well, but is he another guy that gets to the bright lights? And we saw what he did at Navy, playing even in some high-profile games here and there. We saw what kind of competitor he was there. Does it click for him a little bit in the preseason and as he tries to win a roster spot? So lots of storylines going on, but I think early on it's kind of telling how many players they still are going to have sidelined in this first preseason game, but gives a chance to see some of these younger guys in action and see what they can do.
Luke will be at the stadium on Thursday. He'll be out in the backfields, Owings Mills, all week. We'll be up late with the Orioles in Oakland and San Francisco. You can reach him, Luke, at WNST.net. Don't forget, we have head coach Brian Billick, our head coach here at WNST, on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation, with us at Hempstead, Greenmount Station in Carroll County. Crab cakes, beer. Come on out to Greenmount Station. We love seeing you. Great to get back up there. I think my wife will be joining us as well on Tuesday night. Tuesday night, head coach Brian Billick. Learn more at WNST.net. And at any point, if you got any questions, concerns, complaints, you can always email me, nasty at WNST.net. Facebook Live, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports. Good stuff, man. Relax, and if I need you, I'll throw you a note if anything weird happens tonight. But I'm going to go do Mike Nolan here and check back in.
All right, man. Sounds good.
You got it. See you, bud.
All right, yeah.
Towson, Baltimore.